So this is Henry, and Henry had these babies like 48 hours ago.
There's 5 of them.
There's 5 of them. It's a relatively small litter because she is a first-time mom, and also babies having babies. She's just a year old now, and
How big is Henry?
Henry is, because she's still got her pigger's weight, she's probably about 270 pounds. The pigs that we raise are a little smaller than like the more common conventional livestock breeds.
Nose to tail, like how long?
5 feet.
So, like, if she stood up, she'd be as tall as me, probably.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. She
weighs a lot more than I do.
If she stood up,
and
she
stretched her feet up,
she'd look a lot like you.
Wow, thanks.
Yeah. Well, like if you were both skinned and hanging from a butcher's hook, it would be fairly similar.
I mean, I don't eat them.
Pretty similar to humans.
Can we talk about the babies?
Probably about the same height.
They're very cute babies.
There are 3 boys and 2 girls.
What are you going to do with the boys?
We're going to castrate them on Saturday, which I do the castrating and Pat restrains the pigs while I do it. I am the scalpel welder. You basically make an incision at the high point of each of the testicles. Mm-hmm. So you make like a little slit, and then you pop out the nut.
Lock them into positions of hopelessness and helplessness. The government gives them the drugs, builds bigger prisons, passes a 3-strike law, and then wants us to sing God Bless America. No, no, no. Not God Bless America. God damn America. That's in the Bible for killing innocent people. God damn America for treating us citizens as less than human. God damn America as long as she tries to act like she is God and she is supreme.
And
the technical farmer term is the nut.
You pop out the nut and pull. I just rip
the nut out.
Yeah, I just rip them out, and you want to pull out the entire sperm cord too. So it's like the nut, sperm cord attached to it. Give it a good yank.
What happens to hogs if you don't castrate them?
If you don't castrate them, not only will they be aggressive once they like come into pig puberty and their balls drop. Oh, Henry. Oh, sweet girl. She's just messing with her house right now. Yeah, if you don't castrate the males, they'll be aggro for sure. They will fuck their siblings and their parents, whatever. But they also get an
pigs. They're just like us.
They are. That's kind of the tagline. Yeah, they'll get a off taste in their meat, and
that is called
it's called boar taint.
The coroner that pronounced Jeffrey Epstein dead also pronounced like Robert F. Kennedy dead and shit, and like lots of other questionable deaths. But more importantly, the New York Post reporter who was the first to report on Jeffrey Epstein's death was friends with Robert Maxwell and was the first to report on Kubrick's death, and said that he was happy and peaceful, smiling and laughing when he died.
All right, everyone. This is the person I've been in a car with for the last week. That's Sara June.
Hello.
Me and her on tour talking
I have
about
important news.
Jeffrey Epstein conspiracy theories and shit. Hi, what's up? This is Pod Damn America, the gothic socialist podcast for dumbasses. Hi, this is Jake. With me is Sara June.
Hello, I'm thinking Epstein. We're in the woods, and I'm still thinking Epstein.
Yeah, we got those brain worms.
Yeah.
Someone described a while back the Epstein brain worms as being like, you know those old cartoons where like, there's an apple and there's a little worm that comes out of it and smiles?
Yeah.
It's just that, but it's your head.
And it's Jeffrey Epstein's face on a worm.
Yeah.
I'm just saying there's not any reason to believe that anything that we are told in the media is true. There is no reason to believe anything the FBI tells you about this man's death. There's no reason to believe anything the CIA tells you about this man's death or his life.
Yeah. I obviously like am in the same. I have Epstein brain. I think he's dead. I went back all the way back around. I don't think he's alive anymore. But I just disdained to joke about the Epstein thing being a little bit of a put on Twitter, and people got so mad at me.
Well, a lot of people sincerely believe that the Clintons are not involved, and so that's like upsetting to realize.
I just meant like how just fucking everyone I know has just got Epstein brain, and it's like it's a little trendy, I guess is the word.
Okay.
I suspect some people aren't actually reading the conspiracies, and they're just like, "Hey, I got Epstein brain.
No,
I'm part of the cool
Jake,
Twitterati."
I'm reading the theories. I'm in a DM. You know, I'm in a group about it.
I'm just saying, don't cosplay. Like, you got to read the theory.
I've read the theory. Can you do? Well, there's already a podcast to tell you about Epstein theories.
Yeah, they got. I think they got mad at me. Don't worry, idiots. I got that brain too. Epstein brain. That's when he sucks your dick. Okay, let's start the podcast.
Start there.
We're reporting from a forest of marijuana, the Pacific Northwest. I finally made it back here. I haven't been here in 10 years, and I was a little bit apprehensive about coming to this part of the country because I think I'm a different type of... my brain runs on alcohol and cigarettes and, worrying about things, and this part of the country is very chill vibes and weed and...
Smoking it right now.
Yeah. And I was a little worried, but actually I'm kind of getting into it. I think that this part of the country is changing me.
Jake's shoulders are now slightly below his ears.
Arcata did a lot to me.
Yeah, that place is great. We should we talk about where we started?
Well, let's go through so far where we've been.
Okay.
We started in Los Angeles.
We did roast battle. Okay. I won. Let's get that out of the way. I won the roast battle. Not important.
What'd you win, Sara?
I won nothing.
Yeah.
I won no money, no clout, no title, and no fame.
The funny thing about that roast battle was apparently there was these two old guys that were like store comedian guys that were the last card, and they were like about to fist fight each other over this dumb game that you win nothing for.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, you don't win any money when you win roast battle, but like if you win enough of them and you get on the fucking leaderboard and you become undefeated, then maybe you can go on roast battle on TV and maybe get money.
Yeah.
But really, it's like the prize is maybe getting a writing job on the fucking Comedy Central roast of Alec Baldwin or whatever. So it's not really a prize.
You know what I'm
It's just a fucking job.
More like a sentence.
Yep.
Hey, please hire me. Okay, so yeah, no, these two guys were like about to get in a fucking fight in a parking lot.
Sometimes when the jokes aren't that good, the judges won't pick a winner because they're like, this wasn't that interesting, and then those guys have to then decide, whether they tied or whatever, and they take it real seriously.
Yeah, so we did that. We didn't realize that Jon Stewart was one of the judges until the car ride home.
Yeah, somehow we missed it when they introduced him, and his face was in shadow. He was wearing his incognito John hat, and he has a beard, and he doesn't sound like Jon Stewart anymore.
His voice was like hoarse from like farming or whatever the fuck he does now. Like,
he doesn't farm, he just cares for animals.
Oh yeah,
they're not livestock, they're just there to like live out their days in happiness being petted by Jon Stewart until they die.
It was a weird experience because he was like it's so dark in the fucking store that when I looked up there, he looked like he was in silhouette, like he was being interviewed.
I literally couldn't see his face. Yeah.
And then
and his voice sounded different, like he was talking into a voice modifier.
So I think we did really well because we were like, we're not in front of the Daily Show guy right now, you know?
I was like, this is some fucking store guy that I don't know and don't care about. Because sometimes they get random people to judge roast battle.
Boy, let me tell you, that random person has been me.
Yep, that's what I'm saying, man.
No one knew who the fuck I was.
Yeah, you're just there. The store's weird, man.
Yeah.
They have their own rules.
Yeah. So LA was good. We shoved off from there, did some bar shows and shit. I did a bunch of podcasts. And then quickly, I got sick of LA pretty quick. I think what I really wanted to do this tour was just get out into the fucking country, man. We went to, where the fuck did we go after that?
We went to the wedding.
Went to the Bay Area and then missed our friend Claire's wedding.
We planned this entire tour around a wedding that Jake said was on a Sunday. It turns out it was not.
We put it in a Google Doc wrong. I remember the conversation where we were like, which day is it? And I'm like...
Look, I am a +1 to this wedding. I had never seen the invite. I said, Jake, when's the wedding? He said, it's the 8th. I said, great. And I put in the thing, and I never saw, I never RSVP'd. I'm simply a +1.
I don't know how this fucking happened. We ran into like 10 people that were like, see you this weekend, just vaguely.
At the wedding. We were like, yeah. And then the weird thing is we had a show booked on the night of the wedding like a bunch of fucking assholes.
Well, because we fucking thought it was the night before.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I know. It was bad. It was a bad look. And even Clara was like, I saw your tour schedule and I thought, huh. And I was like, why didn't you say anything? She was like, I don't know. I figured you guys would figure it out. I was like, no.
Such bad vibes. I started off in like LA and was really stressed out from planning this shit. And then like, ruined my friend's wedding.
I'm sure, they got married without you.
No.
They were okay.
No, it's not legally.
The wedding was ruined.
Legally binding unless I'm there. I'm ordained. No. Congratulations, Clara Kane and Nick Nanny.
It was a beautiful wedding from what we saw.
Yeah.
Lovely vibes.
Sam Talent was wearing shorts.
It was nice.
Pretty chill wedding. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyways.
It was a polos type of wedding.
Anyways, let's stop talking about this forever because I feel so bad about it.
I know, it's funny though.
But more importantly, right? Okay, here's something we should talk about. So when you're driving up the West Coast, you're driving through these forests, and like these are all over the country. If you've traveled around enough, you'll see these like yellow signs that say like, mysterious thing, 100 miles, and then mysterious thing, 75 miles. It just keeps sort of like egging you on, like you got to come see this thing. There's one in the Southwest called the Thing, and then there's this other one up here called the Mystery Spot.
Well, the Mystery Spot is an actual paranormal site.
Yeah.
No one's going to argue with me on this. Thank you.
I went to it. I saw it.
Yeah, the Mystery Spot is not like, come look at our big ball of string type tourist attraction. It's come feel our weird hill.
So the Mystery Spot is you go and then a fucking underpaid college student tour guide drags you through this hill and explains that there's this paranormal like anomaly of physics where there's this like gravity is just like slanted.
Gravity's weird
by
like,
a degree.
Basically, this guy tried to buy like a plot of land in the woods, and and he had to buy the hill next to it, and the hill you can't build anything on because the gravity is too strong. He like tried to build a cabin on it, and it slid halfway down the hill. This is the story they tell you, and and now like when you're in the cabin, everything is really like tilted. Like they tell you're at this grade and you have a level and stuff. And so like shit looks really fucked up and tilted when it's actually flat, and it looks flat when it's actually super tilted. Water runs uphill, all kinds of craziness.
Yeah, it's cool. It looks like the little fucking house from the end of Hereditary like slid down a mountain and landed sideways, and then you walk inside of it and everything's slanty and optical illusion-y. You pull out a compass and it starts spinning around.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And they start explaining that they think it might have something to do with like the fucking like a magma underneath the earth creating an
aliens.
alternate gravitational pull and all this stuff. Totally worth $8.
Yep.
You buy a weird tchotchke. That's fucking it.
Got me a mug. Got me a banana slug finger puppet.
Check it out if you're in that part of the country.
And you get the bumper stickers for free.
Now, here's the second part of the story. If you keep driving up the West Coast and you pass the Bay Area and you come up towards where we are now.
We're in like Northern California proper has Confusion Hill.
There's a similar yellow sign that says 100 fucking miles from here, Confusion Hill. You gotta check.
And there's
out
a big
Confusion
question mark.
Hill.
That's their logo, so it looks like it says Confusion Hill, 100 miles.
But it's like similar, like font and colors and stuff.
Yep.
And then you get to this thing called Confusion Hill, and it's like really fucking similar to the Mystery Spot.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
There's like the same type of architecture.
It's not as good.
They
have the architecture. So at Confusion Hill, they have no actual paranormal like spot. They don't have the mystery spot thing of like, oh, we bought this land and we found it. What they have is a guy who was like, that mystery spot thing is pretty cool. I bet I could find another one. And he went and looked around for spots to have a fucking confusion spot.
He just made.
And he was like, this one's fine. And nothing happened. Like, there's nothing that happens on the hill. But they have a little building shaped like a shoe. They have a little like shoe house, and they have a lot of like maps around, and they have a lot of vintage Smokey the Bear stuff, and they have some good like Bigfoot shit, and they have cedar boxes. It's like a classic Highway 5 experience. But then they're like, also, this hill is confusing.
Okay, so here's my point about this, right? You go into Confusion Hill, and there's this guy who's like, I wanted to make one too, so I bought a sideways cabin, and I threw it in the woods. And you're like, okay, and you walk inside of it, and not the same stuff happens, but he's like, sideways cabin, right? And then you go to the gift shop to buy like a little tchotchke of like a wood carving of a bear, and they go, okay, it's $7, and then the $1.49 after that, that's the government's cut. And you go, you're fucking libertarians.
Yep, they're libertarians.
That's what's going on here.
Yep.
They're like,
they sell bumper stickers that have the Confusion Hill logo, which is like, again, a big red question mark in front of what appears to be like a yellow hill, like a little peak. And it says, the system isn't broken, it's fixed.
Oh.
Confused much?
Confusion Hill.
Triggered.
What you're feeling is the invisible hand of the market. That's why everything's leaning to the left. Confusion Hill. Libertarian mystery spot copyright infringement thing where they're just like, what? We should be allowed to compete with the mystery
49
spot.
cents for the governor's cut.
This is not a market of things that need to be competing with each other. It's the exact same thing.
But I will say Confusion Hill has the man-made attractions of a big pit full of rocks where you can stack the rocks. It says stack rocks here.
Oh, yeah.
And it also has like a big plaster hand coming out of a tree that's pointing at you for no reason.
And they also, we should point this out as it is pertinent to the date we're recording this, there are the Twin Tower Memorial Redwood trees.
Those are not redwoods that were planted on 9/11 or after 9/11. They are just two redwoods that after 9/11, the guy who owns Confusion Hill said it there on the plaque. It says, well, after those terrible events, I looked at those things and I said to my brother, Bill, I see the Twin Towers. And so we put up a sign that's like everything in the mystery spot. Also, at Confusion Hill, there's like an FAQ on a tree. And there's all these like, how did this house come to be? Blah, blah, blah. And that's how I found out that he went looking for a Confusion Hill. And then one of them is like, is there a lot of spirit activity here? And it's like, no, we don't have any spirits or ghosts, except for my brother who loves to run the trains. Anyways, we call him Engineer Don. He's definitely around. It's like, no spirits, except for this one that's definitely here.
Yeah, what the fuck was that?
I don't know what they're trying to, they're not selling it as haunted. They're just letting you know.
These people don't know what the fuck they're doing.
These people are crazy.
They're all over the place.
They're all over the place.
Get it together.
I got a nice patch.
All right. So okay, we passed.
Confusion Hill, a must see. Mystery spot, higher quality, but not as kitschy. Still pretty kitschy, but not as kitschy.
Yeah. No, Confusion Hill, like, steal shit from their gift shop, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I went and I bought something. I bought a Trump. I bought a postcard of Bigfoot with Trump hair, and it said something really ambiguous.
It said, elect Bigfoot for president.
And then, like, the person who sold it to me was like, huh? Like, they thought it was cool? I was like, this is a joke, right?
I think they like Trump.
Yeah, and Bigfoot. So, I don't know, man. Fuck Confusion Hill. That's my point here.
Mystery spot is hot. Confusion Hill is not.
Let's, I'm going to talk about Arcata on the next episode.
Okay.
We'll skip Arcata. Now, we've made it up the coast into Oregon, where we were just immediately, fog just comes down and you drive through it. It's fucking awesome.
Yeah, you enter a cloud.
Everything's just real spooky. Trees are real hypnotic.
Jake's never seen trees before, it turns out.
No, from a part of the country where they're illegal. And and so we've made it. we're in the we're at a specific part of our voyage here. I don't know how to
Do you want me to say where we are?
Hold on, I'm setting this up.
Okay.
We are on a left pig farm.
Okay. I was going to say the part of the country we drove through, if that would help.
Okay, go ahead.
We drove through Northern California and then through Southern Oregon, and now we're in Southern Oregon, and we've been seeing nothing but trees for like 3 hours of driving, and now we're at a left pig farm. There
All right.
you go.
You nailed it.
Yep.
Okay. Hi, I'm here with Kait and Pat from, what is the name of your farm?
PK Pastures.
PK Pastures. I love it. Tell me where the hell we are. What's going on here?
You are in the painfully adorable town of Sweet Home, Oregon. We are in the mid-Willamette Valley, and our farm is just under 6 acres. We have pasture and a little stand of heritage oak trees, and on that 6 acres, we run hogs and chickens. And we rotate our animals through our pasture. So we're doing there's this movement in sustainable ag that got pretty hip after Michael Pollan's Omnivore's Dilemma came out, and he interviewed Joel Salatin, who is a livestock farmer in the Southeast, and he popularized this system of basically rotating your chickens through your pastures after your cows, and then maybe you throw some hogs in there and blah, 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 blah. So he popularized this model of how small scale farmers could move away from our conventional CAFO, concentrated animal feeding operation methods of raising meat in America. And we are millennial farmers who jumped on that bandwagon. So it's called rotational grazing, which sort of speaks for itself, right? We don't raise our animals in a big, creepy, dark barn. We raise them outdoors.
Yeah, totally.
Where they're supposed to live and shit. We move our chickens once a day. And we move our pigs once every 2 weeks. So we are letting our animals forage for their own feed, right? That means eating grasses and legumes and bugs and stuff.
I see. Yeah.
Out about in the world. And then in addition to letting them be animals and do the thing that they are, naturally supposed to do, we're also letting them drop their manure in situ, right where we want it to go. So the main advantages of rotational grazing are that your animals are living a higher quality lifestyle. Their meat ends up tasting better because they're eating green stuff, right? Breathing fresh air, getting sunshine, but also you don't spend your time shoveling shit because they're pooping in place, right? So they're fertilizing our fields for us.
Oh, smart. Okay. I get it. So I guess the other thing about this farm that is interesting to me that made this whole idea pop out to me is that we're sitting in a room with a big sign that says "fuck liberalism." There's all sorts of theory books all over the walls and shit. We're obviously all big leftists here. Yeah.
Okay. So a thing that I haven't told either of you yet, which is maybe this is the lefty credentials for the farm, is the foundation of our herd of swine, aka our mama pig, our big girl, our sow, is named Carl. And her name is Carl because I got her she's about 2 years old, and I got her on Cinco de Mayo, which is Karl Marx's birthday.
Oh, right.
And the idea was I was going to get this group of pigs. I bought them as piglets, and I was I'm going to name one Carl, because it's his birthday. And that's going to be the pig that I raise for my own freezer. But then it turns out that this young lady stole my heart, and instead of like having Carl be the freezer pig, I was like, oh, that's my girl. I'm gonna get her knocked up. And
Sure.
like, I'm not gonna knock her up, but I'm gonna outsource that. Right, but I kept the name Carl. So our big mama, who just had her first litter of her own piglets 3 weeks ago, her name is Carl. And then last yeah, that's the big that's the big black girl out there. And then our boar we got last fall, and I fucking think this is hilarious, and like no one else has ever laughed really when I've told them this, but his name is Trotsky, which is funny because pig's feet are called trotters.
Oh, clever! I get it.
Yeah. I think it's fucking funny. So yeah, so our breeding stock was Carl and Trotsky. And Trotsky, we did like a farm walk this morning and met the pigs, and Trotsky is the only one who isn't currently out and about on pasture grazing, because I had to put him in timeout in our barn because he recently got a whiff of our younger feeder pigs. So the pigs that will be butchering next have come of age, if you will. And a couple of days ago in the morning, I found him in their pen, just like fighting and fucking his way through all the pigs. So yeah, he was like tossling with all the males and just like chasing tails super hardcore. So
I remember when I first moved to New York.
yeah. So yeah, Trotsky's in the barn for a second, and I'm gonna have to like move him.
You have to butcher
to
him
a farther field
with an ice pick to the back of his head.
Yeah, I mean, I don't do that. I have to take him to a USDA facility and have someone from the federal government ice pick him.
Sure.
That's just the law.
Just like Trotsky.
Yeah, exactly.
Or whatever. I don't know. Stop trying to assassinate my pigs. Okay.
Please. Thank you.
Well, anyway, so tell me a little bit about like, because we were, talking last night when we rolled in about sort of how a lot of the farming stuff here relates to labor politics and also to like, the agriculture industry and the way that it connects to everything else.
Yeah. I, especially because you are landing here after your show in Arcata, I wanted to talk to you folks about sort of like the dirty, seedy underbelly of organic and sustainable farming. Maybe to like back up, like a way to start that conversation is to acknowledge that organic food, the food that we should be eating, the food that is good for us, is like really expensive.
Yeah.
It's like out of the price range for most of us. Like I have been on food stamps for pretty much my entire farming career because you don't make any money farming. So to like purchase the good food that I am growing, if it's something that the farm that I'm working on doesn't produce, like I have to buy that shit with food stamps. Right. The cost of real food that is good for people and the planet is already super expensive. The bummer is that even that like inflated or not inflated, sorry, even that higher cost of organic meat and veggies and dairy isn't high enough because that price, even though it's already unattainable for a lot of people, doesn't include adequate compensation for the people that work on organic farms. So yeah, see previous comment about I'm 32 years old. I've been working in sustainable farming for a little over a decade, and I have, I think, twice gotten up to minimum wage.
Wow.
And that's like working in a managerial position.
Yeah.
I got paid basically minimum wage. But for the most part, folks who work on sustainable organic farms, especially small family farms, it's a lot of like you're working for what comes down to drastically below minimum wage, but it's in exchange for like room and board, right? So
Right.
like that probably means you live in a tent or a trailer or a converted tool shed somewhere on the farm's property, and you work there during especially the height of the season, like maybe 10 hours a day. It's really physical.
It seems ironically just really similar to the original serfdom.
Oh,
that
sure.
Everything
Yeah.
sprung out of.
Yeah, of course. But there's this weird thing where like so I went to school in New York. I was overeducated at Sarah Lawrence College. And then like, sure. Right. Like read Wendell Berry and Michael Pollan books, and like fell in love with just being real, like calling myself out, right? Like in my youth, I fell in love with like the romantic idea that's sort of like an iteration of the Back to the Land movements in the 60s, right? So like kind of like communards, like 2.0 sort of thing.
Sure, yeah.
And a lot of that again was inspired by like fucking the omnivore's dilemma, like that kind of like acknowledging that there are big problems in our food systems. And so going like, all right, well, I'm going to start an organic farm. I'm going to like go work at an organic farm and sort of atone for my privilege by
Yeah.
living this like ascetic sort of lifestyle. Like I'm going to work really hard, and I'm going to, it's like changing your light bulbs or using a reusable canvas tote bag.
The first instinct that most people have when they even start thinking about this stuff is that, like, because we're kind of brainwashed through liberalism and capitalism to think like your agency is the things you consume, the thing that you do when you work or whatever. It's you start off with like lifestyle stuff,
Yeah.
and then sort of move from there, and
Yeah.
later come on to realize it's like not enough, I guess.
Yeah.
But I totally follow you.
Right. So getting back to like how that relates to labor questions, right? Is that like because of that process of like feeling like you acknowledge that there's something broken and fucked up in our system, and you feel like you are motivated to do something to change it, right? So maybe you make this personal lifestyle choice like, well, I can't really kick against the pricks in a big systematic way, but I can go, grow organic potatoes or something. So I'm just going to go do that. And at least that makes me feel like the labor that I'm doing is good,
Right.
is like noble in some way. Right.
Yeah.
And in that way, it's sort of like it's like a solipsistic sort of,
Well, it's not bad.
it's not bad, but you're not necessarily contributing to a greater solution, but it like feels good to do.
Yeah.
So then you have this workforce of people who are happy to work on organic farms and accept shitty payment for the labor that they're providing, right?
Right,
Because
okay.
it's like, I'm grateful to be here. Like,
Yeah.
I'm going to work for shit pay and I'm going to like it.
Right,
You know what I
yeah.
mean?
There's that weird
Like-
self-flagellation thing
Yeah.
so that I can, feel better about just being a bougie consumer in like a lot of other
exactly.
ways. Yeah.
It's like joining ISIS.
Say that again?
It's like joining ISIS, I said. You're motivated by ideology, not by payment.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
It's exactly like that. Sarah.
But so then what that means is that you have also like, who are those people then? Like, who is able to make that sort of decision? Like, again, it's like rich kids who go through the dumpster diving phase.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, oh God, it's way like that. Like, I'm not saying I'm from a wealthy family necessarily, but I grew up in like an NPR listening household, you know,
Sure.
raised by like a single mother. But I'm from like a middle class liberal family. So when I made the decision to like fucking live in a teepee, you know, and like work on a heritage dry corn farm, like I knew that if shit really hit the fan, I wasn't going to end up totally like cold and alone in the desert, you know, like my mom could help me out.
Oh, okay.
Really,
I see
right.
What
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. This brings up something kind of interesting to me because like,
just to interject really fast, like, I just want to say, I know that makes me sound like an asshole.
No, it makes you sound like most people.
But it's true. It's fucking true. Organic farming community. You know this shit is true.
Yeah.
You know it's true. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's fucking most people, and everyone's like afraid to sort of actually, reckon with their real placement in society. But most of us are kind of on some level on a spectrum of like that middle part.
And it's like, these aren't conscious decisions that I'm making at the time, but it's true. It's like, that's what has enabled me to choose to go into a profession where I know I'm never going to make any money.
Yeah. And then not wanting to talk about that's like part of that like weird liberal guilty thing we were talking about. But so I guess the reason this is interesting to me is because, you know, you can sort of criticize people's like lack of ideology and people just sort of getting stuck in this like these very short-sighted little frameworks where they're like, well, I'm going to do this job and that's, me contributing towards a better society or a better world or whatever. Or I'm going to, be vegan, or I'm going to like consume certain things ethically. And, I often do criticize those things because they're just, I don't know, they're like insufficient if you actually sort of think about them to their logical end. They don't do anything that collective action would. But what's interesting is, I can't just go around making this argument and talking about how this thing sucks and criticizing it all the time. Like, we also need to explain like how it actually leads to really bad shit happening. That's why I guess I'm going to ask you to explain this sort of concept of sustainable agriculture being propped up by illegal weed and the effects that has.
Yeah. So I guess first I'll just say, like, as a disclaimer, this is not necessarily the case for every small scale or sustainable organic farm in America. Like, this is something which is a really, really common practice. But, there are plenty of farms out there that aren't propped up by weed money and that grow vegetables. Like, that is also true.
I guess what we're talking about here is a specific like byproduct. It's not across the board rule,
right?
But it's real.
Yeah. Essentially, there's like the dirty secret that I was talking about before is certainly in the West Coast farming community, it is fairly common that because sustainable organic farms have like just a really thin margin, like, again, you don't make money doing this stuff. A lot of farmers have either gotten the startup money to like buy property or invest in farm equipment because they started out growing weed in the Prohibition era, under Prohibition. So like, yeah, weed's legal up and down the West Coast now, but that's still a relatively recent thing, right? So yeah. I know of a number of farms that were only able to get into the veggie business because they had started out growing weed, right? And like, maybe they had worked on other farms and they had organic farming experience, but it's like, you're never gonna have enough money for down payment on a property working as a farmhand. But if you hustle some weed, like, yeah, you can afford to buy property. You know what I mean? And this is like, it's a fairly common thing on small farms, but I have heard anecdotally, and I will say, like, this is anecdotally, this is like a friend of mine whose girlfriend worked on this farm. So like, you know, whatever, rumor mill shit. But, oh my God, it's so crazy. It's so crazy, folks. This is some crazy shit.
Oh, please.
One of the farmers who, like, old school hippie dude, like back at the beginning of the organic movement, like basically writing the national checklist for organic certification at a national level. One of the farms that like is foundational. Same fucking deal. Like a friend of mine's girlfriend was really stoked because she was going to go get to work for a season on this farm or like visit it or something and learn from, like, you know, at the feet of the master, right? Like this old school farmer dude in California. And she gets there and she's kind of just like, wait, what the fuck? Because like the workload is a lot of like, oh yeah, we're going to take care of the pot right now. Like, because that's really important. Like, we got to take care of the pot. And like her experience there was like, it was all marijuana harvest related shit and not vegetable stuff. She was like, oh, you know, it's just like a you too, you know what I mean? Like too. Yeah. And I guess maybe I need to stress that the reason that I find that so like kind of like, yes, sad and what the fuck is like, if you are sort of like an elder, you know, in the farming community, and you're part of like a big, like visible national conversation that's happening about what does organic agriculture mean? What should our growing practices be? Like, how should we organize and run our farms? And like, you're not including fair and like, if you're not including both adequate compensation for your laborers and like really putting a real price on the food that you're growing, you're just doing like not just our industry, but like our community in general, like at such a disadvantage.
Sure.
You know, it's such a fucking blind spot. It's such a blind spot. Okay. So that's one part of the like weed and organic vegetables on the West Coast are tied is, farmers will grow weed. Farmers will have illegal grows. You take that money, you use it to buy your farm. Like that's one like old school thing that happens. But then there's this other weird like Walmart-esque thing, right? Where like Walmart's employees have to get food stamps or be on like Medicaid, Medicare because Walmart doesn't take care of their employees, right? Right. There's also the thing, which is true, that illegal weed grows end up subsidizing small organic farms specifically because like to continue to work on an organic farm and not get paid anything like and stay and survive, you're probably going to go trim weed.
Yeah. Not to mention if you work at Walmart, you probably also just sell weed.
Sure. Yeah.
Thing just subsidizes everything and it fills in the gaps where they're like, oh, people can live on fucking, you know, on us paying them nothing because they're aware that you're just going to have to do other shit. Yeah. Yeah. Right. And so it's the same thing on these like, you know, fluffy rainbows and unicorns, feel good, small organic farms is there's sort of this expectation that you're going to work on this organic farm during the growing season, growing vegetables, but then you sure as shit are going to have to do something that actually makes you money in the fall and the winter because that's not what you were doing on the farm, you know? So it's a pretty common rotation to like work at organic farms
during spring, summer, up to fall. And then, especially in California, like go find some place to buckle down and like get off the farm, go trim a bunch of weed. And then like, that's what you live on for the rest of the year is the money that you made, trimming. And to be clear, I'm talking about like illegal grows.
Yeah, so that's like that's kind of where this thought is headed, I guess, is there's this byproduct of these small farms not paying enough and then causing people to subsidize their own business with the illegal weed industry, because if you sell legally, the market up here is really flooded, right?
Right.
Like everyone is just there's just weed everywhere.
Yeah, everybody is trying to sell weed to everybody else on the West Coast. Like everybody's fucking growing weed.
Yeah, there was like a boom, right? Like
It's
when they
nonsense.
legalized it, and there was like too much weed at one point.
Yeah, it's like there are more pot shops than there are Starbucks.
Yeah,
now,
we saw like a
like,
cute little sign on the way here that had like an ear of corn on it, and it said "Sweet Cron." That one.
I know that sign.
Yeah, we love that sign.
Do you think that's actually weed? Because I like. Yeah, there's this.
Well, it's either that
sign
or
that
it's the band corn. It's a misspelling of the word corn. It either means weed.
It's been there for years.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You drive by and you have this conversation every time.
Like,
What does it mean? What does it mean?
I would like for that to mean that like they're selling chronic at their corn farm.
I mean, I really thought it was just a sign painted by somebody who got mixed up.
Me
and then
too.
was like, they'll figure it out.
Right.
There's a picture of the corn.
It's literally just like a hand painted sign on a piece of plywood that like no one has changed. I don't know.
I thought it was Dr. Dre. It's like organic Dr. Dre. Like hippie Dr. Dre.
Oh, NorCal.
Well, anyway, okay, so this is an important distinction to make, right? There's the legal weed industry, which is the fucking everything's flooded, everyone's selling, and then there's this other thing where because weed isn't legal everywhere, some people subsidize their income by selling illegally, like into other states.
Yeah, like if you're trying to actually like make a chunk of change and you're still a pot grower on the West Coast, you're probably trying to sell to the Midwest or the South or the Northeast. You're going to try to hustle your product in states where it's still illegal because that's where the price is higher.
Right.
Pot sucks.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So basically, the way that equation balances out is that white kids on the West Coast are making a shit ton of money selling weed to places where brown kids get locked up in the prison industrial complex for having, like a joint somewhere in their car on their dashboard. And there's like somehow this like willful blind spot on the West Coast around that, and like our complicity in jamming our prisons full of black and brown kids who are, like the fact that they had some pittance of marijuana on them is like the excuse for them to get hauled in.
So what's interesting to me about this whole like picture that we're painting is that if you look at the large, the whole picture here, what you've got is farmers that don't make enough money in their own industry, because they're not paid well enough, because of the fucking bosses and because of just all this shit we understand about capitalism. So what they do is that then they have to subsidize their business by bootlegging essentially weed into a situation where it then gets black and brown people put in jail. And so this is all like one big unfunctioning thing, and it causes like what we were talking about earlier, the farmers themselves to sort of be like, blissfully unaware or detached from it. The same way, you might feel guilty about eating meat, but if you never fucking come see the pigs, who gives a shit? It's like not in your head, right?
Yeah.
That detachment is a real problem, and that's why just just thinking of yourself as like a little ethical consumer or an ethical producer isn't enough, because unless we fix these things like in a really big revolutionary way, these things will inevitably always happen, I guess.
Right.
The system always works out this way because the root of this problem is that people aren't getting fucking paid their fair share.
And like,
Yes, please. Yeah. Like, I want to go back to the thing you were talking about earlier, which is that organic food, even though it costs more than conventionally grown food, still doesn't cost enough. And like, I think it's sometimes hard to zoom out and really think about the fact that like we have so much cheap food in this country. And it seems like it's a good thing because poor people can buy cheap food. But the reality is food should cost more and people should make more. People should be able to afford organic food because there is no long-term solution that is cheap forever. You know what I mean? Like conventional agriculture it's capitalism applied to the natural world. It's taking the idea of infinite resources and applying it to the natural world where the resources are not infinite unless they are properly managed. So like you end up with like, yes, like, you know, everybody knows big ag is fucked up, but I can't afford to buy $8 eggs, you know?
Yeah.
right.
It's just a huge bummer that when you produce something of quality that you're proud of, it's not available to people. It's not available to normal people at all, basically.
Because we're so used to the idea that we should make starvation wages, that minimum wage, which is starvation wage, is like enough. When like the only thing that you can do when you live on minimum wage is eat the cheapest, like most processed, most efficient, lowest quality food available. And that's what big agriculture is producing.
Right. In what should be considered a normal world, we're not producing anything fantastic. We're just producing normal food.
That's a good point.
It's just regular animals eating on the grass. It's just normal food. But for some reason, and when we were on one of our little field trips coming out to Oregon to figure out where we're gonna land, we stopped by a couple of farmers. I can't even remember where it was, but this guy's name was Zach, I believe, and he put it into my mind. Just I can't remember the exact words he used, but to label something organic requires all kinds of regulation and all this stuff, and the government has to get involved, and there's all this stuff. But it's expensive, but it's totally fair game, no problems at all to like spray poison and stuff all over the food and then sell it. Like that's totally legit. It's easy. It's cheap. It's a really strange, backwards world we live in.
Yeah, what's the one that's regulated and hard to get the sticker for is normal
food.
Zero, nothing happened to it yet.
Yeah.
That's fucking weird.
Just regular food.
That's so fucking funny.
Yeah.
Which is then, right, like, so the real big fucked up large system, well, this is very wrong thing is, and the reason that farmers like get paid shit and make shit money is because we heavily subsidize, like we actively subsidize the scary, gross big ag farming systems,
right.
You know, like this is a weird thing too, that I like always makes me raise an eyebrow. Any type of like vegetable is classified as a specialty crop at like a federal level. So we subsidize big commodity crops. We subsidize wheat, corn, and soy, like super, super, super heavy. Those are the things that the government like helps pay people to grow, and like corn very much so that we can do like corn syrup and all the processed foods. We don't subsidize quote unquote like specialty crops, which is like vegetables, yeah, like the stuff that we should eat,
stuff that's good for you,
right? So
this is also in a way is related to like health in the U.S.
In a way.
Yes, it is.
Everything's just made from fucking corn and weird cash crops and shit, and there's no incentivization for food that is actually good for us to be distributed according to the needs of our health and not to whatever the market here's what I'm getting at. I've been thinking about this since I got here, right? So we're on a small farm, and there's always these sort of arguments about small farms versus these big fucking crazy factory farms. But on some level, in our utopian vision of things, you know, a centrally planned large farm could solve a lot of these problems. It doesn't have to be small farms that are competing with the evils of a big private farm, right?
Totally. And there's like sticky historical precedents and weird feelings about like, yeah, central planning for farms. We've seen that maybe not go so great in other places.
Right.
But I mean, like, so yeah. Yeah. There are things to be aware of, and there are problems to avoid with that. But I think it belies a total lack of imagination to be like, yeah, it has been fucked up before in the past when we tried to do that. So obviously there's no way to try to make that work in the future.
But it's also like farming is one industry. I guess really at the base, all industries are like this, but it's, you know, it's governed by availability of natural resources more directly than, you know, say media. And so to create one large farm, you know, like a centrally planned farm goes against is as monoculture, you know, what you end up with is monoculture, unless it's like, then you would have to plan biodiversity, but that varies so much by region that, like, to me, it doesn't really make sense to have one big farm just as a farmer, you know?
So, I mean, yeah, monocropping is bad. Monocropping is where you just plant one species and a lot of it. So think of like, you know, just a massive cornfield in the Midwest that goes on forever.
Or soy or wheat.
Sure. Like that is bad for the environment because you end up having a lack of like species diversity, you know, all sorts of stuff. And then also if you have like a pest or disease problem, if it's just the same crop planted as far as the eye can see, that can proliferate. You can get like, they can breed and spread really rapidly. There's just, monocropping.
When you plant different kinds of plants next to each other, they help each other resist diseases, and they take different things from the soil and they put different things back in the soil. And when you have just all of one kind of thing, it's like when you go to a live Pod Save America show and you're like, oh, this is one big guy named Jeff. And it's bad. And when one Jeff gets a disease, they all become diseased.
All the Jeffs go down. So we don't want to advocate for large scale monocropping systems, but it is true, back to that question of personal agency versus like actually making a difference, chipping away against larger problems. It's like we can do the best that we can on our 6-acre farm. We can do that on our small scale and sure, feed people in our immediate community. Those are good things. But there are a lot of people living in this country, and a bunch of small 6-acre farms isn't necessarily the most efficient way to grow enough food for all of us. So like at some point we do need to think about, you know, what if there were larger farms that, you know, weren't like managed by Monsanto and like self-driving poison spraying tractors. You know what I mean? Like we could do that, and they don't need to be monocropped. They could be, for example, they could be silvopasture, large expanses of silvopasture, which is an idea that's gaining traction in the sustainable farming community. That's been around in a lot of cultures around the world for a while, and it's essentially you put trees in your farm landscape. Mm-hmm. So I think the most interesting idea that I am gonna work on getting some grants to implement here on our farm is alley cropping. So that's where you have rows of trees that are planted in lines that are far enough apart that there's a alley which gets enough sunlight, because if you planted your rows of trees too close together, right, they would shade out whatever you're trying to grow beneath them.
Right.
But so then you have this alley that you could grow other food like grain crops in. So maybe you have like a row of hazelnut trees or apple trees,
cool.
and then you've got like 50 to 100 feet of corn, and then another row of trees, and so on and so on and so on.
Yeah.
And like that's an idea that's gaining traction because we need to think about carbon sequestration, right?
Yeah.
And like trees do a good job of that. We did a lot of cutting down trees to farm. So like maybe we should think about putting some of them back. And it's that thing of like, you know, you plant a couple of trees in your own backyard and like, okay, great, that's nice. And again, like I bet that makes you feel better or something. But that's the type of thing that when we talk about actually doing it on a large scale, like now we're getting somewhere.
Yeah, and that's also interesting because it's like it's innovative and in a way that is oriented towards like the sort of the new oncoming problems that we're going to have to deal with in terms of this stuff. So like, yeah, you can't just carbon copy a large centralized farming plan, or you shouldn't, obviously, the ones that didn't work in the past. And also we should be criticizing all of the faults of these, you know, capitalistically, privately driven plans. So this is, like a lot of things that we talk about as modern leftists, something where the thing that we're envisioning is not just like a copy paste of something else that worked somewhere else. It's going to have to be something entirely new, especially because we are more than any other generation ever having to factor like climate change into all this, with the fucking Amazon being on fire and shit. So things like you're saying, you know, putting trees back in the ground has to be a part of it, which is why it can't be entirely profit driven. Obviously, it has to, like, this stuff on some level has to be just about making life better for people on the fucking planet.
Right. Like we don't necessarily need to cut down trees to produce meat, right? Like there's that, one of the reasons that the like drive to have people eat less meat in America, which by the way, I'm in favor of. We should all eat less meat. Eat less meat, if you're going to eat meat, know where it comes from. You don't need to have it every day. Once a week is probably fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. But like people will talk about clear cutting or burning down the rainforest for cattle farmers, for people to ranch in the fucking Amazon rainforest, which is insane, or to grow soybeans, which then get shipped to the States and used as feed for livestock in these large concentrated animal feeding operations. Yeah, and clearly that's bad, but like we could imagine a different system. We could implement a different livestock rearing practice that involves planting trees and running our cows, our sheep, our pigs underneath those trees, like stacking functions, you know, like It could be additive, not subtractive.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be one or the other. There's like, and what's cool about sustainable agriculture now is there are so many people coming up with all these different ideas, partly because of like, you know, essentially the failure of big agriculture and also the need to adapt to climate change. But I wanted to mention the alfalfa thing. Like one thing that's really heavily subsidized in California is alfalfa, and it's to ship as pig feed, mostly to China. So like the worldwide consumption of meat is like, it's driving the domestic economy, even though it's, you know, that's like one of California's big exports. And so the California like water table is getting really fucked because we're growing a lot of stuff, but it's not feeding even Americans or even people, you know. It's more profitable to grow pig feed and send it to China. And that's, you know, kind of crazy.
Yeah, and I just think it's interesting, you know, when we're pushing for these solutions or avoiding these problems, and in regards to like the fear of central planning, I think it's interesting that we are even discussing like the idea of like putting central planning in place as if there's not already central planning and a huge system that's already going. Right. It's just a matter of how can we do this much more intelligently so that, so that I mean, like it doesn't necessarily make any sense to have a battle between large farms and small farms. It should just be like the right size farm for the location, and it maybe doesn't make any sense to like grow all of something in one little part of the country and then ship it all over the place. And I don't know. Basically, it makes a lot of sense to have some people in charge of just thinking about these things and being part of planning, because the individual farmers are mostly concerned with what's right in front of them on the land they're standing on, and aren't necessarily trying to coordinate a continent-sized nation of food.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, well, I mean, it's like as simple as it's just thinking about this stuff just reminds me of like when I see those fucking scooters in cities that everyone hates so much, and I'm like, I hate them too, but like the fix here isn't. I mean, it's fun to beat the shit out of them and destroy them and throw them off of bridges and stuff, but like what would be a better fix is just like, what if they were just ours? What if they were just run publicly or whatever? The technology that's in place can't serve us. It's just we have to just get the fucking profit motive out of it, because it's what fucks everything up.
Yeah, whenever I see those scooters, I'm like, if these were free, they would be tight. If these were just here and people could just ride them around and, you know, people wouldn't steal them because they also need money. If they were free, I would fucking use them. Yeah.
Actually, let me tell you something about that. So, like, there's city bikes in New York, and it's just like a fucking bike that just has like a little iPad screen in it. And you see them all the time with just the screen bashed out and shit. And like, so someone's just riding it as a bike now. And I saw the most dystopian Black Mirror shit ever the other day, which is that I was working in Manhattan, and I saw a kid working for Uber Eats on a city bike. And at first I was like, this doesn't make any sense, like economically, dude, like what are you doing? And then I noticed it was a fucking broken one that he stole. He stole to use it to make money doing deliveries, which is like what we should be doing with all this shit, man.
Yeah, like, I mean, to be clear, I would love it if, personally, I would love it if under the Sanders administration, like, I was a government employee.
Hell yeah.
I would fucking love it if
and then his pet in the office would be Carl.
Yeah, exactly. Like, there's some good language in Bernie Sanders' right, like environmental policy that he's released, like the Sanders edition Green New Deal, right? The language is a little bit vague, so I don't know. Holler at your girl, Bernie, Bernie's staff. But there is verbiage in there about support for sustainable, small, and organic farming systems.
Yeah.
Again, it's pretty vague, but it sort of points at and mentions investing in farming systems that are good for the planet and the people who live here, rather than environmentally disastrous, which is what we have right now. I as a farmer, my goal is to feed people, not to feed rich people, right. Like not to sell to like super awesome, hip, cool restaurants. But like my goal is to make food that is like nourishing and also makes people happy when they eat it, right? Like, and why wouldn't that be a publicly owned resource, right?
It's pretty
like,
basic. It's like,
shouldn't that?
It's like the main thing that people need.
Yeah, belong to us and be for us. I'd love to live in that world.
Yeah, well,
sounds fucking dope.
I fucking hope at some point that this shit is that happens, because I just ate a big plate of food here made here at the farm, and it was fucking tight. It was so good. I just want everyone listening to know that you should come out here and eat these people's food. It's badass. I have one more question, I guess, one more thing we should talk about before we get out of here, just because it's been on my mind since we've been in this part of the country. You guys are farmers. What do we do when shit goes down? When the apocalypse starts happening?
Excellent question, Jake. Yeah. So again, with that like self-serving, it's kind of selfish thing. Like I Right. Like I went to school in New York City. I lived in New York City for 7 years.
Get out.
And then I got the fuck out. And now, like I'm I'm raising my own meat here. I also have strategically invested in a flock of laying duck hens.
Oh, okay. So
Down, right? Feathers, down. That's a thing that keeps you warm. I also have a small flock of sheep, wool, right? That's a thing that keeps you warm.
when we have to fight in the Civil War, I'll sick the ducks on the enemy.
Oh yeah, they're fucking gnarly. Right. Oh man, that's a whole other can of worms that maybe like maybe the like seed that I want to place out here, if anybody listening is interested in having a conversation about this issue, is we got to talk about agricultural cooperatives.
Let's do it.
Like we as an organic farming community need to talk about that too, because I think that's what we do when shit hits the fan. Right? Is like, there's some interesting examples to look at in Italy of like when the recession happened in 2008 and when that rippled across the globe and you had economies just eating shit, taking nosedives. It's really interesting to look at the way that Italy's agricultural community like stayed level, and there are a lot of like they continued to stay solvent because they had banded together. They were cooperatives of growers, producers, and distributors. And I would encourage people to ask the internet about that and look at it as a positive example of the work that we need to be thinking about doing in the States. Because, right, we need resiliency. Yeah, where like we're still able to get food to people when shit goes down. And how do you do that? You do that if like we own the means of production, which in this case is like how, like growing the food. It also includes like the seeds that you use, right? Like not fucking scary big Monsanto proprietary seed, but like local, regionally produced seed. Like you need your own seed stock, you need land to grow food on that is owned by us, by the people. You need storage facilities and you need distribution channels. Right.
And that'll be more resilient theoretically in like a recession, say, if we were to experience another one really soon.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like that's a big question to think about too, because like it's a lot easier to imagine that happening right here where we are, right? We are in a rural spot. We're surrounded by farmland, but how do you then get that to dense urban areas, right? Like, how do you fucking get that shit to Queens? How do you get that shit to Detroit? What does that look like? So our website is pkpastures.com. There's like our contact info on that. Mm-hmm. Seriously, if there are any other farmers listening out there, get at us. We should talk.
I think I have some farmer listeners. I am to understand there's a lot of downtime in farming, which is why podcasting is probably taking off in this line of work. Mm-hmm. Put on your headphones, go play with your pigs, listen to an episode of fucking Poddamn, and talk to PK Pastures.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Just a second.
Another thing I wanted to ask about is the intersection between climate change, immigration, and farming, because obviously illegal immigrants are the backbone of American agriculture, and there's a lot. It's affecting, Trump's immigration policy is affecting where people are going right now, and then especially in the next few years, climate change is going to drive a lot of immigration. So we might get like huge influxes of immigrants. So then what the fuck will happen? Like, when do those people when does that start to affect the industry, like in a way that you're preparing for?
Right. Well, yeah, it's like I focused on talking about like basically like, hey, white kids get fucked over in agricultural work too, and just
Everybody does,
and glossed over what I feel like this audience probably takes for granted, which is like, yeah, right, like the thing about agriculture in the States is like it basically rests on the back of migrant farm laborers coming up from the southern border, right? Like that's like, we all know that, like that's where your Cal Organic broccoli comes from, like that's who's picking your fucking organic strawberries.
And again, that's why you can afford them ever.
Right.
Because those people get paid less than American workers get paid.
Exactly. That's huge. That is real. And there are definitely farmers that, like, with Trump's maniacal and inhumane, atrocious nonsense that he's engaging with in terms of immigration policy right now. Yeah, there are plenty of farms, especially the big California farms, that are freaking out about like worker shortages.
Yep.
That's
they
real.
wanted Trump, and they didn't think he was going to take their laborers away.
That's a food security issue for sure. I don't know enough about union efforts among immigrant farm workers,
but there are union efforts
to speak on this issue and do justice to it. But in Oregon, I'm gonna have Jake pronounce it because I don't speak Spanish. I suck.
Okay, this is the PCUN, or PCUN, Pineros y Campesinos Unidos del Noroeste. Noroeste. And this is a farmers union. Yeah.
So like there's and that union has a fairly decent presence in the state of Oregon, and I would definitely I'm making the assumption that there are union efforts in other states which are also representing immigrant farm workers, but it's like that's the other huge part of the puzzle, right? Is like, how do we give representation and voice and support like those workers, which are pretty much feeding our country, like those are the hands, the backs, the bodies that are doing that work for us.
I mean, like, if you want to talk serfs, that is like the closest we have to serfdom is like you come onto land that is not yours, you work on land that is not yours, you live on it briefly, and then you have to leave because it's not yours. Right. So like it's the most fundamental part of our food system is the fact that the people that do the majority of picking and farm working don't get paid enough. And that's one thing that I think the idea of an agriculture cooperative addresses in the most functional way is like, how do we turn the people who do the work into the people who own the means of production?
Absolutely. And that's another thing that we need to look at, funding at a federal level, right? Is how you, it's about like, how do you put ownership in the hands of the workers? It's right.
Yeah.
It's that story again.
This is like one of those things that relates to so much stuff that we could we could just keep going. Cause I just talked to Tim Faust about like healthcare and his sort of vision of health justice. And, the more we talked about it, the more I realized like these basic things that are the fucking, like the three things that a human body needs or whatever are these such large industries, and they've just fucking relate to like everything. This relates to healthcare. This relates to trade deals and stuff. A lot of this immigration stuff is also highly related to trade. Right. We could talk about, fucking NAFTA and, how you have this whole system of underpaid workers and all this stuff being outsourced to other countries and shit. I mean, we could fucking go off, but
Yeah, I mean, like, imagine a world where we do have climate refugees who are crossing into the States and like seeking asylum here. And what if the answer was like, all right, you get a fucking government union job working on a farm growing real food, you know?
yeah.
And we take care of you. Like, because we need you here. We
Right.
need help to like move to a farming system, right, that's less environmentally devastating. Like, what if those were union jobs? What if we took care of the people that did that for us?
Yeah, and then I mean, you also like we should eventually think about that internationally, where it also shouldn't be a situation where you even have to leave the other country to get here.
Yeah.
There should be, protection for those workers worldwide.
Right.
That way,
But-
because all this stuff is not made in America, too.
Right. But, it's like there are places that are going to become too hot to grow food.
Sure, yeah.
Too dusty to grow food. Like, soil destroyed. Like, we can't, right. There are a lot of populations that won't be able to stay in place where they are now and still support themselves.
Yeah. Well, food affects trade. It affects the fucking mass incarceration. It affects the healthcare industry. It fucking affects everything. So I'm glad you guys are making it, because I need it, and I like eating it.
Yeah, in terms of like consumer level action, this is like a little bit the just change your light bulb thing, but not entirely. If folks are interested in supporting farmers and like figuring out together as like eaters and producers how we can arrange our food system in a different way, I would encourage people wherever it is that you live in the country to like look for CSA farms in your area. That stands for community supported agriculture, and the model is basically like it usually works that farmers ask people to sign up at the beginning of the growing season to be a member or subscriber, you could also say, of a farm. So basically you pay the farmer part or a portion of the tab for the food that you're going to eat that season up front. And then they will, for vegetable farms, it's like they'll give you like a box of produce a week, essentially. So then you're cutting out like the middle person, right? Like you're
This is what I'm
you're just
saying
buying
about-
direct from the farm, and you're eating seasonally. It's like you get tomatoes when tomatoes are fucking in season.
Yeah.
And you have to learn what celeriac is and cook it. And there are CSAs are becoming pretty common. So if you are someone who's like thinking of signing up for HelloFresh,
This is what I'm saying.
or some meal kit
It's like
box,
a better version of your dumb like nerd Funko Pop box. Where
Yeah.
You get video games and dolls and shit.
yeah.
It's your fucking loot box of vegetables.
Yeah. Yeah. And it doesn't come like pre-packaged in little like portioned things in, like little plastic wrappers
This
or
is
whatever.
what I'm
Like you
saying
will have
about-
to chop the vegetables yourself.
This is what I'm saying about the fucking dumb scooters. It's like, no, just make it ours. You know, this is that same technology, but used as a way to alleviate these fucking problems.
Yeah. And I get that the idea of paying for like a year's worth of organic vegetables in February is not possible for a lot of people. Like that it can, depending on the way that a farm runs it, it could be like, and that'll be $700, please, like right now, which is something that I certainly couldn't afford to do. But like our CSA that we run cooperatively with some vegetable farmer friends, because we're all like broke millennials, is like a month-to-month subscription thing. So it's like you pay like smaller increments like when you can,
It's a food treon.
Yeah.
It's a
kind of actually.
It's a Patreon. You know, like with a tree in the middle.
Silvopasture. Yeah. So again, other farmers out there, like I would encourage people to think about how you can arrange price points that like still give you the compensation that you need to live your life and sustain the land that you're stewarding, but also like how can you lower the cost of entry to make it accessible for more people who want to eat like good food straight from a farm but like can't just drop $900 at once. Anyway, CSAs, different people run them different ways. Look for them. See what you can find. Check it out.
Cool. All right. Well, we should probably wrap up here because we're getting a little. We just got to drive soon to another town. But let's go around and plug all sorts of things that we have. Sara, you got.
I don't come see me and Jake. When is this coming out? Okay, well, probably don't come see me and Jake. We'll probably already have been in your city. Go to if you want to see me do comedy or watch my videos, you can go to heysarajune.com. You can also visit youtube.com/means_TV. That's where I work.
Cool. So yeah, the farm, I guess.
Yeah. The farm's website is the letters PK and then the word pastures.com. There's information about what we're doing and who we are there. On Instagram, I don't Instagram much, but we're at PK Pastures on Instagram. And that's it. We're a farm.
And we might as well talk about your music for a minute.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
I mean, if you want to plug anything. I happened to realize last night we've played your music on the podcast before.
Yeah, you did. You said a thing about how you shouldn't play random music and get sued or something, and that people should send music in, and then I did, and you emailed back immediately and put it on your podcast, and I was like, wow, I can't believe that worked.
Hell yeah. And then I came and ate all your food.
But yeah, I've never plugged anything before, but sure, you can check out Bear Hat Project on the Bandcamp website.
You're in a band too, right?
Yeah, and Vampirates is our punk band based in Reno.
Cool.
And we're on all of the things, Facebook or whatever. Vampirates.com. There you go.
I love like punks that are so anti-capitalism that they're like, how do I sell? I don't know. Just buy my thing.
Yeah.
All right.
Anyway, yeah, Vampires. Check it out.
Cool. Badass. All right. Like I said, I don't know when this is coming out. Probably like next week. I'll probably still be on tour. My tour dates are on feraljokes.com and also at feraljokes on Twitter. It's my pinned tweet. I'm on the road until like October. So if you're in the Pacific Northwest, I probably already came there. Middle of the country, Colorado, Oklahoma City, Texas. I'll be doing shit down there. My last show's in San Antonio, Texas. I just added it. It's on October 4th. That fucking San Antonio is always really hot, so I'll probably be doing one more show there and recording it. And sign up for our Patreon if you want to support the show and get a free digital box of shit, which is just the other episodes of the show. That's it, I think. It's finished. Okay.